lovely internet bookworms. Welcome to Pages and Pages. Today I'm going to be doing a reader problem tag. Reader problem? Problem reader. I have a problem with talking, but I read. Because the illustrious Victoria from A Hermit's Progress tagged me. That's me being excited. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of questions, so I am going to get right into it. Question number 1. You have 20,000 books on your TBR. How do you decide what to read next? So I don't actually have my TBR written out in its entirety anywhere or like kept on my computer or anything. I just have kind of scraps of miscellaneous notes that I've taken about books that I potentially want to read at some point. But mostly I just keep it up here. And that becomes significant in choosing my next book because when it's up here, like, I just kind of go with what I feel like reading next. Even though I know there's like 20 books that I do actually want to read, there's only maybe like 10 books that I can remember from my TBR list at any given point. Unless I like find some random scrap of something that I'm like, oh yeah, I should read that. And usually if I just read something really heavy, I'll read something lighter. If I read something long, I'll read something short. Sometimes if the author mentions a book in their book, I will go read that next too. So, or if I get really caught up with one author, I'll just keep going with that author. So there's kind of a million variables going on in that selection process. Number 2, you're halfway through a book, you're not loving it. Do you abandon it or power through? Answering the question with a counter question, why am I not loving it? Am I not loving it because it's really challenging my ideas and I kind of hate all the characters and there's just lots of negative emotions going around? No, then I definitely keep reading it because eventually I'm probably going to get to the end and be like, oh, that was so good. But if I'm not loving it because of the writing style, well, I'd probably still read it because I don't know, sometimes it's entertaining to read bad writing. Sometimes I abandon books, but they just get relocated on the TBR to be like read at a later date. Number 3, the end of the year is coming and you're really close but really far away from your goal on Goodreads. Do you try to catch up? I feel like this question is very specific to Goodreads. I don't really keep track of that number so much. I don't give myself a numerical goal for books that number of books that I want to get through. I kind of tend to give myself more personal goals of like challenging books that I want to read or certain authors that I think I should read. So those are much shorter term kind of goals. I don't know. During university, I was definitely a procrastinator though, so like, I definitely might just wait till the end and then try to force read a bunch of books. I could see that happening if I was doing that sort of thing. Number 4, the covers in a series that you love don't match. How do you cope? I don't buy that many books, and the books that I do buy are usually complete series already. So if I'm actually if I love a series enough to buy it, the covers are gonna match. But I don't cope well. Number 5, everyone and their mother loves a book that you cannot stand. Who do you talk to about that? I am really fortunate to have a best friend who also really loves reading and who loves discussing things. So even if we don't share the same opinion on a book, we can usually have really great discussions. And I find that to be true with a lot of people in general. If somebody loves a book, they're going to be willing to talk about it. And even if I don't love a book, I can still engage in a discussion about that book with them without needing to share the same opinion about that book with them. That said, if everybody and their mother is reading and loving a book, just generally I probably am not going to read it or really have a strong opinion about it. I tend to not love hype around books, unless that hype is like hundreds of years old. 100-year hype. I'm into that. Number 6, you're reading a book in public and you're about to start crying. What do? So about that, I am a very emotive reader. I will laugh out loud, I will yell at a book, I will whisper at a book, I will have a full-on conversation with a book. I will cry at books and not really care about what's going on around me. So yeah, I'm the weird one in the corner who's talking to her book. You get used to it. Number 7, a sequel of a book you love just came out, but you can't remember what happened in the first book. Do you reread the series? Do you skip the sequel? Find a synopsis? What's plan of attack there. So I kind of hate having this problem, just not a fan. If a series isn't finished, at this point I'm really not probably going to read it until it is finished. The last series I remember this happening with was the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld that I read back in middle school. I think when I found that series it was just Uglies and Pretties, and so I waited for specials to come out, and I remember just diving into the sequel. I didn't do any sort of reviewing or anything like that, but I didn't ever read extras, so I kind of abandoned that series after that book. But as I said, I don't really read series that are coming out right now. Maybe I should. Let me know. Should I do that? I kind of don't like that idea because I like to be able to like power through them. Number 8, you do not want anyone borrowing your books. How do you tell people no? False. I do want people borrowing my books. I'm going to be really blunt here. My relationship with people and my fellow readers is more important to me than keeping my books in a pristine condition. So if they want to borrow it and dog-ear it, go for it. If they want to write in it, go for it. Like if they want to read it and be a part of it and that involves getting it messy, go for it, because then we can talk about it and engage about it and build some common ground and have a relationship there, instead of it being a very limited, don't touch my stuff kind of a relationship. Okay, let me show you what my books look like on the inside, okay? There is just all sorts of notes and underlining. They're already not in great condition, so if somebody wants to borrow it and like contribute to destroying it, I think that's epic, and I will happily embrace that. A note about this, I think it's really fun when two friends can read the same book and pass it back and forth, and like if everybody's okay with like writing in the margins, because you can like write a question and then when your friend's reading it, then they can answer it. So I did this with Anna Karenina and passed this book back and forth with one of my friends who also read it, and it was really awesome because she would write in it and I would write in it, and we'd have like whole conversations in the margins about the text, and that was really cool because it helped me to understand somebody else's perspective of a book while I was reading it, and so that was a really special experience and I would recommend trying it. Number 9, reading ADD. You've picked up and put down 5 books in the last month. How do you get out of the slump? This kind of harkens back to the first question with the way that I pick books, because I don't really ever find myself in a slump. Sometimes I might take a break from reading and maybe work on a piece of music or something, but normally just switching up the style of a book will be enough to keep me engaged in reading. Number 10, there are so many new books coming out. How do you decide which ones to buy? Remember what I said earlier? I don't buy books usually. I don't have that many books. I will get the book from a library or borrow it from a friend who bought it, but I only buy books once I've read them. That's a whole nother video in itself, how I decide to buy books. I should do that. Would you be interested in that? Would you be interested in a video about how I decide to buy books? Because I have a lot of thoughts there. And last question, after you've bought a book, how long does it sit on your shelf before you read it? If I haven't read it and I've bought it, it's probably something that I think I need to read, and I try to read it before I find it a permanent location on my shelf. But there's definitely books on this shelf that somebody gave me that are all old and cool looking that I'm just never gonna read. Alright, so those are my answers for the Reader Problems tag. Thank you so much, Victoria, for tagging me. I feel so honored. So I would love to see Rio Reads do this tag and Jess the Book Girl, because they're both adorable and awesome. And you're it. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.